Georgie. That's Georgie. I think she's singing Lady Gaga there. Did you notice the song? Did you recognise it? Bad Romance.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did.
Perfect pitch. Did you notice the perfect pitch? She does a lot of songs, and you can find them at Georgie the Grey on Insta.
Georgia.
Is it Georgia? I'm thinking of Georgie Purcell still,
I know.
aren't I?
In all fairness, we have been fangirling over Indy, and his greyhound is called Georgie as well.
Yeah, right. Indy was our last. I hope you listened to the last episode, everyone. Welcome to episode 11 of Talking Couch Potatoes. Last week we did interview Indy for his beautiful film, The Little Grey Film. Go and listen to it if you haven't. If you haven't, I'm frankly disappointed. But this episode, we've got the president, the goddamn president of Coalition for Protection of Greyhounds. Can't wait to have a chat to Andrea later in this show. But we're going to begin in our normal way, Mel, with shout-outs and promos.
Sure, yeah. Everybody, please remember our petition, our online petition for 2024 begins any time now. It's imminent. And please join us at Hyde Park for 2 days, the 3rd and the 4th of March.
3rd and 4th of March.
Hyde Park, WA.
Petition signing.
Yes.
And
sign
fun.
and fun and dog stuff.
And long-nosed friends.
Pat a greyhound.
Maybe have a coffee.
Make a pledge to find 10 friends, family members, and get them to add their name to the petition to end greyhound racing in this state. It is a pre-election year, and we have to put pressure on the Labor government to look at making either dramatic changes to greyhound racing here in WA or to finally begin to phase it out. It is time. It is enough. Too much money has been spent on it. It's not working. Let's end it. And we can only do that if you will add your name to the petition.
So if you want to be a volunteer, get in touch with Free the Hounds, freethehounds.com.au. If you've got any questions about how to do that, send us an email at podcast@freethehounds.com.au. Because the more voices that we can join together, the louder the noise. The louder the noise, the better chance we have to end this outdated, inhumane, unsustainable so-called sport.
And we aren't going anywhere until it's over. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Do you have to put up with me and Mel for just episode after
necessary.
episode after episode? One more thing, Mel, I wanted to mention was you and I had over the little break. So for once, as I've mentioned, Mel doesn't really have breaks. But did something for herself this time, Mel. Did you get inked?
Yes, I did. Yes. And Matt also did.
And what a coincidence. We got it exactly on the same, on the right hock, I believe. Was it on the right hock, Mel?
Yes. Yeah. Because we're fortunate enough not to have broken ones.
So we both got little ankle tattoos.
Well,
and
yeah.
What's yours, Mel? Do
I
you want to share it with our...
I actually got the Free the Hounds logo tattooed on my left, and on my right I have the ear tags of my 2 greyhounds that I currently have.
Aww.
Yeah, in solidarity.
So you're both tattooed?
We're all tattooed.
You're tattooed
we belong.
twins.
We're a little fam now.
Anyone else out there listening, do you have tattoos? Any interesting tattoos? But if it's particularly greyhound tattoos, if it's related to your long-nosed friends, that'd be lovely. Send us, even a photo, Mel?
Absolutely. Send a photo by email and we'll put them on a Facebook or Instagram post that we do and share some ideas, because I know there's lots of people out there that want to get tattoos. My
little tattoo was my second one that I got, but my first ever tattoo, a little love heart in the shape of our 2 puppies curling up together. So it's very
lovely.
It's very manly.
So it's a lady.
And then,
yeah. What did you get on your hock?
Well, I thought a little love heart of greyhounds isn't very manly, so for my second one, I'll go for something real macho, right?
Yeah.
So I got a little ladybug.
Anyway. Okay.
So yeah, send us some stuff. Podcast.
Absolutely, we'd love to see them.
.com.au. We're gonna move straight into this time our very, very special guest, Andrea Pollard, President of Coalition for Protection of Greyhounds. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here and talking about greyhounds, our favourite subject.
I know, isn't it?
Andrea, you've got quite a storied history with animal advocacy and greyhounds in particular. I know that you've been sort of a greyhound advocate nearly 10 years now, since about 2016.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I am aware that you, in a former life, were very closely linked with Free the Hounds and Mel, and you were the treasurer of Free the Hounds also.
Yes. Yeah, no, I was around with Free the Hounds when we began, when we were just kind of this dodgy tent with a few laminated Facebook memes at market stalls. So yeah, it's amazing to see the difference and how far Free the Hounds has come. I'm so happy to see how much more professional and how much more well known in the Perth population Free the Hounds is now. It's fantastic.
Andrea, you're also a lover of animals in general. You have 2 greyhounds as well, and I know that one of them is quite famous in the greyhound community, Canadrone survivor Hope.
Yes.
I hear Hope isn't doing too well at the moment, and I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no. Sadly, Hope was diagnosed with terminal cancer just before Christmas. Luckily, it's not osteosarcoma, as I think most greyhound owners would know how awful that disease is. It's not a painful cancer. So, yeah, we're just enjoying whatever time we have left with her. She's just living life. We went for a walk this morning. She did all her roly-polies in the grass. And her 11th birthday is coming up in April, so we're going to have a massive birthday party.
Yes, definitely. And how have you noticed Hope change from the dog that you brought home from the Canadrome?
I think she's just been a lot more relaxed. So I first met her my first day in the Canadrome 5 years ago. Got this amazing video of me just patting her through the cages. Hi, Hopi, hi. Yeah, and just looking at that video a few days ago to the dog like upside down, legs in the air on my couch. Just the difference is amazing. She loves people. She's lived with cats. She's with other greyhounds. She's just the definition of resilience, out there every day living life the best way she can.
That's always what strikes me, is how forgiving these dogs are. But I also think that that's somehow the reason that they are exploited in the first place, because they do have such a need or desire to want to please, and they are so gentle in nature.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, they want to make their humans happy, and the industry exploits them and feels they make their humans happy by running for their lives, whereas we just want to enjoy them roaching and relaxing and enjoying. That's what makes us happy, them happy.
Exactly.
And as Hannah would say, farting on the couch.
Yes, yes.
If you want to check out episode, I keep forgetting, episode 5. What a great gift, though, you've given Hope, having a loving house and a loving family.
We've loved her a lot. Yeah, and certainly credit to her foster carers in Macau as well. They started the journey for us, and yeah, we're still in touch with them, checking in on her. So she's definitely loved all over the world, which is just very heartwarming for me to know that she's so valued by the community.
Well done, Hope's mummy. We've got some questions, I guess, that we'd sort of like to dive into now. The one thing I want to mention, Coalition for Protection of Greyhounds, CPG, really needs volunteers. And how can we support sort of more volunteers for CPG?
I think, look, one of the key questions a lot of people we get is, what can I do to help? I'm so outraged. I want to do something to help the greyhounds. And volunteering for advocacy groups like CPG or Free the Hounds is a really great way for people to get involved. Critical to ending this awful industry is people power. We know we've got the community support, but we just need to show it to our government. So volunteering to help any of the advocacy groups is really critical.
Brilliant. If people want to get involved with CPG, I'm going to use CPG if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It's a mouthful.
If they do want to get involved, could you sort of first of all tell us a little bit about CPG, like what you guys do and how you sort of act in the political sphere?
So CPG is Australia's only national independent greyhound advocacy group. So we operate in all states in Australia. We're solely run by volunteers. We all work digitally, remotely, and it's really great to kind of be able to connect with people all over Australia and all over the world. We have a lot of volunteers internationally as well to end greyhound racing.
Right.
So CPG is really, I think, data-driven advocacy is a phrase that we use a lot. We do a lot of research and analysis of lots of issues in greyhound racing, so we can bring that information to the public and to politicians, so we can use it to kind of move the dial to end greyhound racing. So one of the main things we do is release a lot of reports and white papers. We do a report, Lethal Tracks, each year that has the national deaths and injuries for greyhounds. So we'll be coming that up for 2023 shortly. We do a lot of research on the regulation in each state. We've got a series of reports that are coming out about each state. A lot into looking into the overbreeding and rehoming stats of greyhounds. A report we released just the end of last year showed that the industry continues to breed over 6 times the greyhounds than it can rehome. So when you look at the greyhounds that GAP are rehoming, the industry's adoption arm, greyhounds as pets, compared to the amount of greyhounds that are being bred, it's just it's overwhelming, and the industry just really doesn't have a plan for where these greyhounds are going. So CPG uses that research to advocate and raise awareness. So we do a lot of traditional media. If you go on our website, you can see a page, CPG in the media, and there's just pages and pages of information that we've got in traditional media. We've got a fantastic team there who works really hard making sure every death is acknowledged, along with other issues. We also work quite closely with a lot of politicians in each state. So we work with the Animal Justice Party, the Greens, a lot of supportive independents, really moving that dial, talking with governments to hopefully one day end greyhound racing.
Awesome. Wow. You mentioned some stats there. Can you give sort of our listeners a rough idea just on a national level? Because I love the idea that digital data-driven, I think you said.
Data-driven advocacy,
Data-driven advocacy, because we get a lot of pushback, I guess, from pro racing, from people with a different viewpoint, but a rather ignorant viewpoint. So the idea that you're working with facts here, this is partly an emotive issue, but it's also a stats and facts-driven issue. What's the overall picture of greyhound racing in Australia in terms of the standout statistics that you're aware of?
I mean, it's just overwhelming. So each year for the past few years, we've had over 10,000 injuries all over Australia, and that figure is increasing each year. So in 2023, the year just gone, we've just had over 11,000 injuries for greyhounds and over 300 greyhounds that were killed for track-related deaths.
Oh my goodness.
And I think, of that stat, of those 300, about 2/3 of them were greyhounds who were killed off track, which is another issue with the greyhound racing industry, their lack of transparency. So the criticism that we're putting on them about the track deaths is then really, they're trying to hide them now by moving the greyhounds off track and then killing them subsequently. So it's quite a disgusting industry.
300 beautiful creatures have given their lives so that a few relatively small proportion, I believe, of Australians can go down the track and chuck a bet on.
Definitely. Look, we know the gambling industry is such a huge, powerful thing in Australia. I often say it's, Australians' guns compared to America. But when you look at the statistics, CPG did earlier this year and a joint survey with Grey 2K USA Worldwide, we're talking about a small percentage of the Australian population that actually gamble on these dogs. We're not talking about the majority of Australians. Most people have not placed a bet on greyhounds. They never have in their entire lives. And that's the reality. It's not entrenched in our community the way the industry likes to say.
And also, Free the Hounds believe that if you were to remove greyhound racing from that suite of options that the gamblers have, they would pick something else to just pick up.
Right.
It's not as if the government's going to lose that money for their tax revenue.
Yeah, it's easily substitutable with
Absolutely.
another gambling.
Yeah. It's not like it's going to cut out a whole bunch of revenue for the government.
It really just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
No.
It really doesn't anymore.
What kind of skills does CPG need?
Look, if you want to volunteer for CPG or any of the groups, we'll find something that you can do to add value. But some of the key areas that we're looking for skills in is particularly in traditional media. So we have a really solid team, but we're always looking for perhaps even retirees, people who've got a good solid experience in media and are available to kind of respond to issues as they come up. Unfortunately, as rural volunteers, sometimes life gets in the way, so it's nice to have people who have a bit more extra time. I think the important thing to know with CPG is that we're all remote volunteers. You don't need to be physically present anywhere. You can do work in your own time, and it's quite scalable. We have lots of opportunities in lots of different areas. Like I said, in research, we do a lot of research. We have volunteers who go through the stewards' reports each day to track the deaths and injuries, who collate other information out there to put reports together, as well as other areas like social media and communications. We've got a lot of campaigns that people do that people can get involved in. There's really any skill that you've got, CPG can use. We have volunteers who can commit like a few hours a week, up to volunteers who are retired, and this has pretty much replaced their full-time jobs. So it's very scalable, and it's something that we can work around the time that volunteers have.
Awesome. And they'll just go to the website, the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds, to get in touch with you guys. And also, I guess, Mel, if they've got any questions that we can help out with, don't forget to email us at podcast@freethehounds.com.au. Andrea, in terms of the volunteering, how would that differ, say, from volunteering for a greyhound rescue?
I mean, the key difference is CPG is an advocacy group. We're really trying to move the dial in greyhound racing. So we don't have like a rescue group, greyhounds coming into our care. There's no hands-on work with animals required. So it's really advocacy, communications, working with our team to end greyhound racing. I mean, really, we need to activate our greyhound community to put pressure on our politicians to end greyhound racing. That's kind of, a nutshell of what we do. And there's lots of different ways that we do that.
Love it. I'd love to see that's, I guess, the primary goal of Free the Hounds, and certainly this podcast is to just end it altogether, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. But the way we need that is, and Andrea's said it several times as well, is we need the people power. We need to get people to help us. It's wonderful that people support us and believe the same things that we do, but unless you are prepared to maybe go and have a conversation with your local MP or write an email to them or make a phone call to them or put your name to a petition, tender protest, anything until that happens, it's not going to get the momentum that we need.
In a nutshell, get off your ass.
Yeah.
I mean, Australians are really fun, happy people. That's our sort of laid back that's our take on life.
She'll be right, mate.
Exactly. But we need to be their voice right now.
And I think for me, the beginning of that stepping away from apathy and moving into action began with education. So I think it's okay to start, listen to this podcast, for instance, would be a good first step.
Absolutely.
And then talk to people who know what they're talking about and get the stats and the facts on these things. Educate yourself first. And I think once you do that, you're generally compelled to act once you know the truth of these things.
I think that's probably every advocate's story. I know that's my story. I adopted a greyhound, wanted to know more, was horrified and needed to do something. And I think almost everyone has that same story.
Yep, so jump in.
Exactly.
And Andrea, people who do support this movement and do want to help, what's the best way they can be most impactful in your view?
I think definitely respond to calls to action. There's a lot of calls to action for different responses we want from the government going on all the time. And that's really where we need that people power. Last year, CPG ran a campaign to pressure Greyhound Racing South Australia to introduce a heat policy. They were racing in very significant heats. And we had over 400 people in about 5 days send emails saying, no, you've got to do something. And then we saw a response. Later down the track, Greyhound Racing South Australia did introduce a heat policy. So you can make change. You can use your voice to make things better for greyhounds. So when you see a call to action, take the time to fill in the petition, send the email, whatever it is, because it's really people power showing change can happen. And just speaking of petitions, our friends Greyhound Welfare Initiative in South Australia also have a petition running. Fortunately, in South Australia, they still have paper-based petitions. So if you are in South Australia listening, please get in touch with them to sign that piece of paper. A lot's happening in South Australia right now with the Ashton report and the industry's 2 years to make change. So anything you can do to kind of put pressure on the industry in South Australia will be appreciated.
Yep, awesome. South Australia, they're an awesome group down there.
They're amazing.
Georgie Purcell in episode 2 mentioned, as you did, Andrea, that the pollies do actually listen if you take action. She talked about the 3 levels. There's email, there's call, and then there's request a meeting. Yep. And they have to respond to that if you're in the electorate. So, we have the power to do this.
Correct, yep. And reach out to either Free the Hounds if you're in WA or to CPG anywhere else nationally, and they will give you the figures, the data to go with to meet your local MP. It's not like you have to have a whole lot of knowledge on it. If you're just passionate about your greyhound and the life they had before they came to you, or just about animals in general, go and speak to your MP and talk to them about it.
Brilliant.
And I think as well, just when you're having those conversations, the arguments that are often used by politicians are about the amazing economic inputs that the industry has to the economy. But we know those calculations are based on flawed data. Lots of the Australian Productivity Commission, the Tasmanian Treasury have called out the multiplier effect that these IER reports use. So there is a lot of information about how flawed those arguments are. So don't feel though you can't argue back. But maybe some politicians don't understand. They accept those statistics as true, but they're not, they're flawed, and you can definitely argue back on them.
We spoke a little bit about that, this kind of bookkeeping that the industry does, Mel. I think it's fair to say it's dodgy, because you mentioned that even the injury rate, they even sort of fudge that a little bit on starters versus
individual greyhounds.
Greyhounds, and it reduces it by tenfold.
Yep.
So get in touch with Free the Hounds and CPG if you really want to know the facts. But there's something really exciting coming up. Mel.
There is.
And Andrea.
Yes.
I think it's the first ever National Greyhound Workshop. Tell us all about it.
It is happening in Melbourne next month. So it is jointly put on by CPG, Free the Hounds and Blue the Grey. So we've got an opportunity to get greyhound advocates from all over Australia and even internationally coming together to really look at how we can work better together and look at some of the problems and how we can attack them strategically at a national level. So we can really learn from each other and decide on some common steps forward so we're all singing from the same songbook.
Sort of link things in together.
Yes, definitely.
Sort of stronger together than you would separately.
A lot of synergies, I think, so we're not all kind of doing the same thing but a bit differently. Yeah, working the best way, most efficient way for going forward.
The beginning of a whole new era of coordination.
No, I think so, yeah.
Coordination, cooperation.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Nice work. I hope it goes really well.
It will.
Andrea, we do have this pro-racing movement that gives a lot of pushback for their own sort of reasons. And they have a certain amount of power as well. I mean, they couldn't have survived this long with such an unsustainable, outdatable, inhumane sport unless they had a level of power. From your perspective, what's the reasons that they hold that power?
I think the main reason that they hold that power is honestly just the status quo. I mean, we've had greyhound racing for so long. To have government step up and say, no, that's not okay, is going to be a pretty powerful thing, particularly when you look at what happened in New South Wales a few years ago where they had the ban and then the subsequent backflip. I think that certainly scared a lot of politicians, and to kind of put their head up and stand up for greyhounds, I think is a little bit scary for them. But I think it is just the status quo. I don't think there's any, to be honest, rational reason why we are continuing greyhound racing. It's a dog-killing industry. It's funded by taxpayer money that would be better spent on literally anything else. There's no rational reason for it.
Am I wrong in assuming, though, Andrea, that there are some pretty strong links between the racing industry and some members of parliament, some politicians?
Yeah, I think the greyhound racing industry is really the gambling industry, and we all know how powerful the gambling industry is in Australia. It's incredibly influential with politicians, and the power that that industry has to influence politicians is a big challenge. One of the biggest challenges we have is the advocacy movement, which is why we need people to step up, to put their apathy beside and take action for greyhounds, because it's the only way that we're going to make change.
And maybe this is crude, but I'm not sure it's inaccurate, but is it a function also of the fact that, and I might get in trouble for this, but the greyhound industry is primarily run by a bunch of old white dudes, and Parliament is generally run by a bunch of old white dudes?
Smash the patriarchy will end greyhound racing.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest, well, one of the reasons why it's moving now is because there is more women coming into Parliament that won't tolerate what's going on.
When you look at the advocacy movement, it is predominantly women who are trying to make change, and we are fighting against a,
bunch of old white dudes.
Your words, not mine.
I'm just happy to be a part of the sisterhood, frankly, and I want to bring some more old white dudes like me into the fold, because this current generation, I believe, I don't know if you have any stats on this, Andrea, but anecdotally, my understanding is that anyone under the age of 35 isn't interested in greyhound racing, is very interested in animal welfare and advocacy. So my best guess is that it's being propped up once again by a bunch of old white dudes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, you're very correct. That was one of the findings, again, of the joint survey we did earlier this year with Great UK USA Worldwide, that it is, older people who support greyhound racing. There's much less support for it with younger people in Australia.
And I think the younger people that are involved are the ones that are using it on apps. They're certainly not people that go to the track and they will happily just flip over to something else. The reason that they're gambling on greyhounds is that the races are on so regularly. There's always a greyhound race happening somewhere in our country.
Yep.
So they've always got something to bet on. It's availability, but they'll have to find something else to bet on.
Mm.
And I want to apologise to all the old white dudes out there that I've offended, and give a big shout out to my favourite old white dude, my dad, who after years and years and years, he's 75, he's quit betting on the dogs.
Wow.
And he is actually encouraging his old white dude mates to stop doing it. So Dad, thank you very much for changing a lifetime habit based on education and develop a capacity to change your point of view. Well done, Dad.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dad.
That's what we need people to do, kind of step up and say, hey, actually, this is not okay. My husband tells his mates, no, can't bet on animals, bet on footy players.
Yeah.
100%, because you can never have animals and gambling and not have a conflict of interest or exploitation. It's impossible. You cannot have the two things together.
Yep.
So true.
Andrea, this has been awesome and very informative as well. I just have one more question before we go. In terms of your top concerns around greyhound racing.
I mean, probably the biggest issue right now is the overbreeding and the rehoming crisis. So that's a critical issue in all states in Australia. The greyhound racing industry is just breeding way too many greyhounds. It's just impossible to find homes for them all. On top of that, we're in a cost of living crisis, a housing crisis, people can't find homes. So rehoming rates are going down as well. So we really need the industry to implement breeding caps, to follow through with the commitment they made in New South Wales to actually introduce breeding caps and reduce the number of greyhounds being bred. Beyond that, our next concern is probably around the taxpayer funding. Again, statistics show this is overwhelmingly not supported by the community, and yet the governments all over Australia are throwing money at this industry. So that is really around making people aware. And I still have conversations every day and people just aren't aware how much taxpayer money is going to the greyhound racing industry. So putting that information out there and then getting people to kind of put pressure on their governments as well. And number 3, really around the poor transparency that the industry has. In one way, we know that we're having an impact, the advocacy work that they're doing, because they are actively trying to hide and mislead and conceal these things. So we're seeing deaths on tracks, the video is being taken down quite quickly. Like we're saying with the deaths and injuries, a lot of greyhounds are being killed off track now. So really shining a light on this industry is having effect. We can see that from the way the industry's responded. So really keeping that pressure on and revealing these misleading things that the industry is doing is key.
Brilliant. We've spoken, Mel, about getting some pro racers on or some people with some alternative viewpoints, and I'd still really love to do that. But I'd love to, keep the facts in mind, not just the anecdotal stuff. Let's just make sure we're aware of what actually happens here, because I'm finding it cognitively dissonant to be able to hold these things in mind, this care for the animals and then the stats.
I think love is such a subjective word. It means different things to different people. People who support greyhound racing mean it when they say they love their dogs, but what they see as love is completely different to what, people who rescue greyhounds see as love.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we'll just continue fighting for our version
Exactly.
of love and try and do it in a loving way, I guess.
Our version will win. So
yeah,
it's just a matter of time. It's always just a matter of time.
Thank you for giving us your time, Andrea.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
All right, thank you, Mel.
It's been brilliant.
And anyone who wants to, join in, jump in, stand up, Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds, Google it and get in touch. Free the Hounds, you know us. Send us a message at podcast@freethehounds.com.au. That's the end of episode 11, though. Tune in again next time. We are at double digits, as I said. We're soon to be a teenager, I suppose.
A few more episodes.
We'll be a teenage podcast.
Just a teenage podcast, baby.
I'm just a teen. That's beautiful. 13 countries listening to us now, too. So if you've got any friends, allies, enemies even, share the link.
Absolutely.
Listen again next time. The more people we can get to listen in, stand up, stand out, and make a noise, the closer we'll get to releasing the hounds.